Hello, this is Dean from Bridgeview Manufacturing, and I would just like to introduce you to our Bale King 5225 bale processor. So this machine has a 5200 series round bale processing tub on it. It'll handle 2 round bales up to 6 foot diameter, and the biggest thing is it has a 100 bushel front mounted grain tank. So this is the machine you need. It's the largest grain tank available on a production machine, and if you're putting out a lot of grain, this is going to be a real time saver, running back to the bin, refilling, or hauling grains longer distances. So the 5225, this got a long history. It started in the early days with a 2020 model over 20 years ago, and it's been refined and improved to the current configuration. So they're well proven, they're just going to be a reliable workhorse for you. So I'll just start at the front and we'll work our way around the back, and I'll just go over some of the features and why things are the way they are. So starting at the front, we've got a cast hitch with, there's an optional clevis insert you can get for straight drawbars, adjustable in height for different tractor sizes or tire sizes. We run a very heavy frame. This is a 4x8 square or rectangular tubing frame. It's built tough. This machine is something like 7,850 pounds. There's a lot of steel in it, and it's going to be durable. For the drive line, we run 1000 RPM, category 6, 80 degree, constant velocity PTO shaft with shear bolt protection. These are right-hand discharge machines, so it puts the discharge on the same side as all your tractor controls, so it's a lot more ergonomic and easier on your neck at the end of the day. As far as hydraulics, there's 5 different hydraulic functions on this machine. There is the Bale Rollers, the loading fork, the main deflector, the unload augers, and the hydraulic lid on the grain tank. Because of that, it's standard equipment. It's got 2 electric over hydraulic diverter valves, which reduces it down to 3 remotes. Taking a look at the grain tank, it is front mounted. To get the volume we needed, it had to be up front just to give room, just so the loading fork at the back is unobstructed. The advantages of it keeps the machine nice and narrow, so it's only somewhere around 9 feet wide, 9.5 feet with the unloading auger at the back, so it's easy to get through gates. And we were sure to keep the tank low enough that you can see over top of it into the tub, into the processing tub, just so you can keep an eye on how the bale is going through the machine. For loading it, the ladder actually folds away underneath, so it gives you more ground clearance. It's got a nice large loading platform and a nice big handhold right here for climbing into it. As I said, 100 bushel grain tank. The tube going through, that's where the drive line goes through, and the auger runs all the way to the back of the machine through the bottom. So with the large lid, you can see around front here, there's a hydraulic cylinder, lift it, and it's just on a switch in the cab. Flip the switch and pull the lever and the lid opens up. So it's nice and convenient. As I said, the auger runs all the way underneath the machine through the back. You can see it going under the processor tub there. And in between the tub, the processing unit actually drives opposite of our standard processors, like just for clearance issues. The hydraulic motors are at the back of the machine and the valve blocks, so runs the same, it's just backwards. This lever here, this is the hoop adjustment, so this is basically your aggression of the bale. There's a wide range of adjustments, so whether you're doing like a dry straw bale or a silage bale, it's just, pull the spring handle and adjust it, and you'll have the control you need to control your feed rate. The lever, we made sure it was on the left hand side of the tractor, so it's just quick to get out of the tractor and make the adjustment and get back in and get to work. So on this side of the machine, there's not much to see. If you look underneath the tub here, you can see that flange there. That is a removable plate for an optional fine chop kit. So fine chop is it's an option. You can put it on at any time, and it's just a set of knives that hinge into the tub, and they go between the flails on the rotor, so it'll chop up things like green feed oats or barley finer as it passes through. The fine chop is it's 3 positions, so it's fully in, half in, or fully out. And it's just a quick and convenient way to get a little finer chop, low maintenance, good system. So as I mentioned, looking back here, you can see the Bale Roller drive motors. These are heavy duty, high torque motors. And the valve block in between, that's the splitter valve that divides oil between the motors. And that valve block also has flow and pressure protection for the motors. The motors only need so much pressure to do the job, and a lot of tractors will put out a lot more pressure than the motors actually need. So, if you don't adjust your tractor, that valve is going to protect you from blowing the seals out of the motor. We still, strongly recommend taking the time when you buy your machine to adjust your flow control on the tractor to the right rate. Otherwise, if it's bypassing through the relief valve, it's going to work, but it's just going to create a lot of heat, and it's just unnecessary. So climbing into the tub, it's basically our proven 5200 style twin Bale Roller style processing unit. There's just not a lot of moving parts on these systems. There's 2 hydraulic motors, 1 on each roller, and 1 bearing. So they're pretty indestructible in terms of leaving them outside, getting material frozen in them. There's nothing really to adjust. They're just, we've got a lot of machines that are 25 years old with this similar type of processing unit, and they're still going strong. So if you want low maintenance, durable system, this is it's a good way to start. So on the 5200 series, on the Bale Rollers, there's a combination of spikes and paddles. It gives you a nice combination of grip on the bale, as well as anti-wrapping. They're going to be more resistant to wrapping hay or twine or net around them, as opposed to full spike style systems. The hoops, it's our newer version of hoops, and you can see there's a combination of short tipped hoops and long tip hoops. The long tips are what give you the control for the core going through. It's just going to prevent slugs from going through and robbing you some horsepower. But the short tips are what gains you your productivity back. It increases throughput by a lot, and it's just a nice combination there. Up here you can see on the side racks, like there's a good steep angle of the side rack, plus it's slippery powder coat, so these machines clean out very well. And the top corners are tipped in, and that just keeps, as the bale's rolling, it tips the loose fluff back into the tub rather than flopping over the side and losing that material. Coming back here, you can see the bale loading fork, pretty standard design. We don't have the tines on. This machine's actually packaged up and ready to be shipped. Something to notice about the tines though, if they were on, you can see on the bottom there's 2 positions on each side, so you can just pull a pin and move the tines in for narrow silage bales, or out on both sides is basically the standard setting for a 6.5 foot bale. The other thing on our tines, which I can't show right now, but they're just a straight tip tine. And we kind of believe in those because we think they're more forgiving in terms of backing into a bale. If you're a little bit crooked or a little off center, the straight tips will still go underneath, and you're much less likely to skew the bale sideways, which would force you to drive ahead and realign. So they're a good, well-proven system. Okay, so on the discharge auger, you can see from this angle, it's built to dump right on top of the windrow. There's other options. You can bunk feed with them, you can pile grain in bunks or in piles. It's a pretty flexible system. We run hydraulic discharge on these augers as opposed to, say a ground driven system, and it's mostly for that flexibility. You can auger grain out from a standstill, you don't need to be going. You can auger grain without shredding a bale. Like if you just want to deliver grain to your cows without putting a bale out, the hydraulic system works well. We do include as standard equipment, there's a flow control valve on here, so you can adjust the dispensing rate on your bale. And especially for tractors that don't have good flow controls themselves, and there is a check valve in the system to prevent the augers from going backwards. The discharge auger on these machines is 6-inch flighting, and it is reinforced, so it's suitable for any kind of grains, pellets, range cubes. It's built for all those scenarios. And there are clean out doors under both the back where the cross auger and the lengthwise auger combine. There's a clean out door, and there's also one just at the back of the grain tank. Coming back here, just looking at the tires and axles, one of the big upgrades on this version of machine is the Torflex axles. Earlier, like the 2020 model, some of the earlier models, we had a tandem walking axle on there. It offered good flotation, there was suspension to it, but there was also more moving parts, more pins and bushings to grease, and more things to wear out. Whereas the Torflex, zero maintenance, they just go to work and they stay working. The tire choice, we do run a tandem tire on here just to get the load capacity and the footprint we want just for good flotation in muddy conditions. And these are a 12 by 16.5 NH tire with and they're 12 ply. So they're built to handle the loads with a fully loaded grain tank and 2 bales in the tub. And they do that at a lower height. So if you can see there, they're well below the discharge area, so they're not going to interfere with your discharge as you're processing bales out. Coming into the discharge area, we'll just have a look at the rotor. And of course, these machines all feature our standard patented X rotor. And the two major advantages of the X rotor are, the first one is twine removal. As you process a bale, the twine or net will wrap around the rotor really tight, but the X creates like a pocket in behind the net that lets you cut it out with a knife, or lots of people have different ways of cutting the net off, but the X just gives you room to actually work. The second very important reason for the X rotor is for metal fatigue. Most rotors are made out of a piece of pipe, and what ends up happening is as the flail, if it hits something hard, the flail is going to hinge back and impact the pipe at about halfway through its stroke. And over time, those constant impacts are going to actually fracture the pipe and cause a failure. And because these rotors they're balanced at 1,000 RPM, it's just not a practical thing to try welding on them. It's just never as good as a new rotor. So with the X rotor, because of that pocket in behind, the flail's got a lot more travel and before it ever hits any steel. And by that point, it's lost most of its momentum, so it's not going to hit as hard, if at all, and it just solves the metal fatigue problem. So our flails, they are 3/4 by 1.5 inch flails on oil impregnated bushings, so solid system. They're about as heavy duty as it gets. Taking a look at our main deflector, it is a hydraulic deflector, so you can adjust from windrowing to bedding to bunk feeding just with the pull of a lever from your cab. And the other thing about it is the flip-up rubber deflector. So when you're windrowing or bunk feeding, you want the rubber deflector down. It'll create that nice windrow for you. If you need to bed, and mostly if you're trying to bed into like a calf shed or something like that, where you need to aim it lower, or if you just need precise placement, you flip the rubber up. And if you look under here at the bottom, like the bottom steel part of the deflector is shaped very gradually. So as you lift or lower the main deflector, you can, it'll just direct that straw exactly where you want it. So it just gives you excellent aim that way. Looking back in between the tub, this valve block here, that's a pilot operated check valve, and it's on the deflector circuit. And what that does, it just locks the deflector up so it won't creep down when the machine's unhooked, or in the case that there was like a valve leak in your tractor or somewhere, the deflector won't creep down unless there's actually hydraulic pressure applied to it. So you can park them safely in the shed beside your truck and you don't have to worry about that creep. So coming back down here under the tank again, you can see there's the clean out door for cleaning out the tank, just for maintenance or end the season cleanup. And back to the front of the machine, we'll just get one last view here. And all of our Bale Kings, they're sandblasted and powder coated with an ultra durable powder coat. So they are very, it's a very abrasion resistant paint as well as UV resistant. So it's going to keep your machine looking good for years. As I said, this is, it's a well proven model. It's been around for a long time. They're just going to go to work and work hard for you. And if you have any questions, there's a lot more information on our website, or we'd love it if you'd give one of our dealers a call. Thank you for your time.